Hey guys, I've been hard at work on the X-Men 97 review, but before we get to that, let's take a minute to look over at Marvel's distinguished competition. Do I even need to introduce Batman at this point? Seriously, I don't even understand why new Batman adaptations even need marketing budgets. You know we're all gonna watch it. And the newest adaptation, Batman CAPED Crusader, makes a really strong case for itself, being executive produced by Matt Reeves, and the mastermind behind the DCAU himself, Bruce Timm. If I could only tell you guys the influence that Bruce Timm has had on my life and my artwork. Like, Bruce Timm isn't a man to me, he's a concept. True story, I got to meet Bruce Timm at Emerald City Comic Con about 10 years ago. He signed my copy of Mad Love, and he was sitting alone at a table in Artist Alley with nothing for sale. No books, no prints, he didn't even have a sign up. If you were clever enough to seek out Bruce Timm, he'd sign something for you. But he wasn't there to sell shit or draw attention to himself because he didn't need to. Like, seriously, what a baller. So we've got a brand new Batman show produced by two masters of the craft, and J.J. Abrams too, I guess. This will be prime new content for... Oh. I'm not gonna get too deep into this decision, but yeah, things are confusing right now in the animation industry. Studios are still hurting from the writer's strike last year, the streaming bubble has finally burst, and David Zaslav seems to have it out for anybody who owns a drawing tablet at this point. So why sell off one of your most consistent moneymakers to another company? Well, the most likely answer is because that's where it would make the most money. Still, it's not a great look to be selling off a major product to another company when you could, I don't know, be offering it to your customers on your platform? I mean, think about this for a minute. They sold off CAPED Crusader to Amazon, but you know what they opted to keep? The Kite Man spinoff. I mean, nothing against that show, but you sold off Batman and you kept Kite Man. Like, I don't even have a joke for this. Like, what? But enough boring business stuff. Let's talk about the show. Look at that! It's the spoiler signal up in the sky! Concerning the story, it's Batman. You all know the basics by now. Dead parents, crime alley, I am vengeance, I'm the night, blah blah blah. That's not important. What is important is the setting. One thing CAPED Crusader does well is that it goes all in on the atmosphere. Batman got his own dedicated comic in 1940, so that's the vibe we're going with here. But it feels like a version of the 1940s where the Hays Code was never a thing, meaning the moral high ground is not exactly a pressing concern. That's one area where I can definitely see Matt Reeves' influence, because this show runs with two major themes that were in his own Batman film, which is eat the rich and fuck the police. In this version of Gotham, the mob has long since bought out the mayor's office, regardless of who's actually in charge, and you can count the number of cops and officials who aren't corrupt on one hand. So it's up to Batman to try to clean things up. If the Dark Knight can be bothered, that is. This Batman is cold, closed off, an island unto himself. Either he doesn't feel anything, or he doesn't allow himself to feel anything. That mood is most present in Hamish Linklater's vocal performance. It's quiet, deliberate, almost monotone. This is probably the closest Batman will ever get to just straight up being Rorschach.
3 explosions in 2 weeks. All 3 buildings can be traced to shadow companies operated by Rupert Thorne. Someone's declared war on Thorne, but they're covering their tracks. Being smart about it.
The city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood.
Quite notably, he doesn't really have anyone he views as a friend or even an ally. Rather, he views the people around him as assets in his war on crime. And at times, you have to question whether that war is actually for justice or for his own personal satisfaction. There's a moment very early on where he has a chance to expose police corruption after capturing it on film, but he turns it down because that's not what he's focused on at the moment.
Hey, I'm not trying to...
Just make sure the Catwoman photos run. I don't care about the others.
This is best represented with how he treats Alfred for most of the season. Usually, Alfred is Batman's rock, but here, he's so distant that he only refers to him by his last name, Pennyworth. And if you're a longtime Batman fan, that stings more than you'd expect.
It's Gotham, Pennyworth. Does the corruption really surprise you?
Is it professional distance? Indifference? Is he just afraid to admit he cares about anyone after losing his parents so tragically? Some combination thereof?
I can't do this job without you.
I know.
As a viewer, I felt the most unease watching young Bruce finally decide to become Batman. In most versions, this is a solemn moment where Bruce decides to become a symbol for justice. But this time around, the motive is much less altruistic, distilled down to one disturbing sentence.
They're going to pay.
They?
I'm going to make them pay. And you're going to help me.
Meanwhile, I don't get paid enough to put up with this.
But this characterization is still made palatable because of one simple thing, an unofficial rule when writing Batman. Doesn't matter how dark and gritty you make the character or the setting, you have to ask one simple question. Can you imagine this version of Batman comforting a scared child? If you can't, well, that's not Batman. That's a psycho in a Halloween costume. And as the series goes on, we begin to see that side begin to emerge more frequently. And we see Batman start to respect those around him, not as pieces to be moved, but allies fighting the same battle he is. It takes him a while, but he starts opening up.
Thank you, Penny. Alfred. Thanks, Alfred.
Yes, after 30 years, my coworkers are finally going to call me by my real name. Oh boy, I'm blessed.
This may be a darker take on Batman, but I think where that darkness comes from is what's most important. When violence does occur, it's not very graphic or bloody. Rather, it's the intent behind it as opposed to the act itself that sticks with you. Batman is still ostensibly for children, so you can only go so dark. This show may be on Amazon, but this ain't Invincible. This is where Bruce Timm's experience really shines through. One thing he's talked about frequently is how he and his fellow animators would work around censorship and network demands to best convey the stories they wanted to tell. Remember, there are no accidents in animation. Everything is there for a reason, which means to an extent, everything was agreed on and negotiated long before pen ever hit paper. And this also means there's a surprising amount of stuff you can get away with. Let me give you an example. In the first episode, the Penguin discovers that one of her sons has been snitching on her behind her back to Rupert Thorne. Oh yeah, speaking of which, Penguin's a lady in this version. I actually don't have a ton to say about this. I think it's a fun new twist, and Minnie Driver does a great job providing the voice. And if you're really upset over it, well, then you're probably still bitter that ladies got the vote too. Anyway, so she confronts the son who she thinks is doing it, locks him in a trunk, and sinks him to the bottom of the river without a second thought. And when she discovers, in fact, that her other son was the snitch, she quickly makes plans to take him out as well. No remorse whatsoever.
Did you remember to eat something at the party, Mama? Because I know you get a little testy sometimes when you're hungry. Wait! No!
Later, when Batman is approaching her yacht via submarine, we see a series of trunks at the bottom of the harbor filled with bodies, making it clear she's done this several times before. And then we get typical supervillain shit like taking down Gotham Police Station with a giant f***-off cannon. I swear, the only reason it's not a death ray is because it's the 40s and the tech for that doesn't exist yet. But you know what? That's kind of what makes Batman so enjoyable. Gothic noir crime fiction combined with costume weirdos beating each other up. The former makes the latter more fun. And then there's Clayface, who kinda goes back to the character's roots while also referencing later versions. If you haven't read the comics, there really isn't much to Basil Karlo, the first Clayface. End of the day, he was just another creepy dude in a mask stalking people from the shadows on a movie set. The shape-shifting version that most of us are familiar with wouldn't come along until much, much later. But Cape Crusader splits the difference. Basil Karlo is only able to change his face. But if you're just out to unalive people from the shadows, that's all you need. So we get the best of both worlds. Well, I mean, the audience does. His victims, not so much.
You and I are done professionally.
And then there's the fourth episode. The Gotham police start trying to lure Batman out by staging various crimes, but he doesn't take the bait. So Bullock and Flash take it upon themselves to bring in a ringer and release Firefly.
Actually, it's Firebug.
Whatever. But before he starts literally scorching the earth, we get a brief glimpse at what the world is like from Firebug's perspective, seeing ordinary citizens and particularly children happily engulfed in flames. Isn't it funny how TV censorship can actually make something more disturbing? Like, setting children on fire? Absolutely not. Imagining children set on fire? Okay, now we're talking.
Yes, burn the child.
And when Firebug gets carried away and sets a whole tenement on fire, Bullock and Flash take him out to cover their tracks. And then at the end of the episode, the mayor is so impressed that he rewards Bullock and Flash by appointing them as heads of a new task force. So to recap, we have an episode of Batman where two cops unalive a perp in cold blood to cover their tracks, and they're rewarded for it. And who says superhero shows are unrealistic? But the one character that comes off as both more and less sinister in this version is Harley Quinn. When Harley first came on the scene, she was defined by one thing, her obsession with the Joker. Well, Joker's not here, at least not yet. So the show approaches her from a different angle, her background as a psychologist. By day, Dr. Harleen Quinzel is a friendly and helpful shrink providing good advice for both her patients and the public at large. And some of those patients happen to be Gotham's most rich and powerful citizens, who only come to Harley to use her as a sounding board to justify the awful things they do to their employees or their families. So she opts to give those patients some more intensive treatment. We even get a more sinister twist on Puddin', her old pet name for the Joker.
Get Mr. Collins to give up all his earthly possessions, and you can have all the pudding you want.
You know, I bet Scientologists think this is what actually happens at psych wards. But the thing is, we have no reason to disbelieve that both sides of Harley aren't equally genuine. In her civilian identity, she's depicted as a good friend to Babs and Montoya. She even starts dating the latter, and that had nothing to do with her schemes at all, meaning she was genuinely attracted to Montoya for real. And by all accounts, she's a genuinely good psychiatrist. When she briefly has sessions with Bruce Wayne and is later brought in by the police to profile Batman, she's right on the money both times with her assessment.
If I didn't know any better, I'd think you really are the shallow cardboard cutout you pretend to be. But I do know better. You've got to wonder what else is he hiding under that thing, besides obvious issues with authority, and maybe a fetish or two.
Oh, fuck, everyone knows that. Tell me something nobody knows.
And when she becomes Harley Quinn, in her view, she's fighting back against the cruel and corrupt in Gotham. She's arguably not a villain, but another vigilante, just like Batman. But what separates them is that, in the end, Harley doesn't care about who gets hurt. Bruce's mission isn't just to fight crime, but also save lives. But like I said, this version of Harley isn't completely villainous. She most likely considered kidnapping Bruce just like the others, but once she realized he was dealing with genuine trauma, she backed off. Though that's not to say she didn't still get a couple of shots in. Wow, I've got nothing. I am genuinely impressed they got away with that. I can think of one thing that might have stung a little bit more, though.
Damn it, I lost.
Though that's not to say every villain gets a much deeper backstory. In that regard, this might be the least deep version of Catwoman in some time. But that's also kind of the point. Recent versions of Catwoman have tried to give her sympathetic reasons for being a cat burglar. Cape Crusader doesn't bother with any of that shit. This time around, Selina Kyle is just a bored trust fund babe who steals to cover her family's debts. And every time she gets caught, she just gets a slap on the wrist from the courts. Not exactly the tragic tale that Bruce Wayne had.
We have so much in common. You know, the whole wealthy orphan thing.
Your father's in prison for tax fraud.
Wow, I know Batman doesn't kill, but that was straight up murder. Needless to say, this is the least sexy and flirty version of the Bat and the Cat. In fact, compared to other Batman adaptations, this one's pretty low on sex appeal overall, which is kind of surprising considering who was in charge.
Ow! Hey! Not so tight! You know, you're really no fun at all.
No, I'm not.
In fact, I thought for sure that Barbara Gordon would be shipped with somebody before the end of the season. But it turns out the lack of shipping was on purpose. According to statements from Bruce Timm himself, early in production, someone at Warner Brothers pitched the idea of Barbara Gordon and Batman being a couple. But Timm personally shot that idea down. After the negative reception to Bats and Babs hooking up in the Killing Joke movie, Timm decided he didn't want to catch heat for that for the rest of his life and has decided to avoid that particular ship in the future. Granted, that doesn't undo past mistakes, but at least he's using his powers for good again. Get that out of here. No. But tell me, does the Dark Knight have what it takes to take on the undead? Yeah, in the middle of all these stories about repressed trauma, police corruption, and class struggle, we get just straight up monsters. Gentleman Ghost appears in episode 6, and a child version of Nocturna appears in episode 8. Like, check this out. Nocturna appears to suck the life force out of innocent orphans, the same episode that Harvey Dent negotiates with Rupert Thorne to save his mayoral campaign. One of these things is not like the other. For the record, I'm not complaining, I'm not saying it's bad. If anything, it's a testament to how well this show balances its tone that it can go from gothic noir to just plain gothic. I'm just saying, it's kind of a swerve.
How did it go last night at the fair, sir?
I found out vampires are real.
What?
Correct. Vampires. Totally real.
Do you want to talk about it?
Meh. I'm hungry. Want to drive through Wendy's?
Sir, it's the 1940s. Wendy's doesn't exist yet.
Oh. Want to open our own Wendy's and drive through it?
Finally, a good use of your money.
What was that?
Nothing.
Where was I? Oh yeah, Harvey Dent. I haven't talked about him yet. Let's do that. First off, the casting is a fun twist. Diedrich Bader has played the Dark Knight himself across 2 different shows by now, but those were mostly played for comedy. So it's interesting to see him play a serious version of Harvey Dent. But in my view, dude kills it. Harvey Dent is portrayed as something of a rival to Barbara Gordon down at the DA's office. He's willing to play the game placating the mob, meanwhile she wants to bring all of them to justice, daunting as that is. But it turns out Harvey has more scruples than I think even he realized. When Rupert Thorne has him backed in a corner, he opts not to play his game. And unfortunately, he pays the price for it. Bruce tries to take him out and make him feel better, but he has an ulterior motive, trying to grill Harvey for information. Listen closely during this scene. Hamish Linklater hovers ever so closely to the Batman voice as he starts to pry for info.
These people are your friends. I dragged you here so you could see that. I thought it might help you to talk about the incident.
What do you mean?
You don't remember anything at all?
Bruce, you're using your Dom voice in public, not in front of the normies.
But as they say, this is not the time, nor the place. Batman's tendency to treat people like assets backfires on him hard, because he didn't consider Harvey's emotional state. Yeah, bringing your recently disfigured friend to a public place and making them relive that trauma for your own purposes, not a good look, Brucey.
Mr. Dent is a broken man in a fragile state, and you pushed him to the edge.
Forgive me for speaking so boldly, sir, but WTF! Bader's performance is delightfully manic, diving back and forth between moods on a dime. Speaking of dimes, this version of Two-Face is kind of unique because his trademark coin is treated incidentally. It only kind of plays into his first crime and then never again afterwards. Harvey's two-faced nature was well established from the beginning. Going mad just turned it up to 11. There is no 50-50 chance here, just cold, 100% certainty.
He made me do it!
Oh, I know, Tony, but you still did it.
In fact, I realized something while I was writing this script. Usually they scar the left side of Harvey's face and he gets more violent afterwards. Here, they scar the right side of his face and he gets more remorseful. For once, Harvey Dent is the evil half while Two-Face is the good half.
Oh God, I really did it. I killed them. I killed them all.
But after he's finally arrested, Barbara is the first one to come to his defense and convince him to testify against Thorne, with Batman offering to help protect him. And his bond with Gordon is solidified in the most unexpected way.
I'm sure you'll keep dropping in whenever you want. Maybe I should have a way to contact you, but...
Klondike 50127.
You have a phone number?
When I need one.
I've been trying to buy the rights to 555 Boob, but somebody's squatting on it. Truly, they are my greatest enemy.
Harvey himself is ready to give up hope, but none of the heroes are having it, especially Batman.
The four of you can't hold back the tide.
I don't care, because you don't bend with the world when it goes bad. You push back.
In the end, it's a bittersweet victory. Harvey is mortally wounded, but major players in Gotham's police corruption are finally brought to justice.
You can't do this. I'm a goddamn cop! You're just some lousy vigilante.
Yeah, well, I'm the goddamn Batman.
The fight is just beginning, but the Dark Knight is not as alone as he thought. So as night begins to set on this review, what are my final thoughts about Caped Crusader? It's good! What, you wanted more? Okay, fine. It's good, but it's not great. No, wait, that's the wrong way to put it. Rather, it's a good show that has the potential to be great. But it's not there yet. Bruce Timm's run on the original animated series is hard to top. Even 30 years later, it's still the definitive version of Batman for a lot of people, myself included. But that said, it's also a rare opportunity that an old pro such as he gets to come back and play in the same sandbox again. Caped Crusader oozes visual confidence. Timm's mastery of the craft is on full display. Not a single frame, nor a single line of dialogue is wasted. And yet, while I think its dark atmosphere is a big selling point, I still found myself yearning for a bit more light. Remember, Batman is not the darkness. He's the light out of the darkness. But Season 2 is already well into production, so I'm happy to hang out in this world made by these people again. But as one door opens, another must close. Before we finally get to the X-Men 97 review, we'll be taking a brief detour to a whole other galaxy. Next time, baby! I always find it so funny when I'm, like, wiping off sweat while I'm filming these. Like, I've got studio lights in my face, but, you know, it's like I'm James Brown in this bitch.